Two men. Two philosophies. Two choices. One decision. You decide.
Hello, my name is Kent Hovind. I was a high school science teacher for 15 years. Now, since 1989, I've been an evangelist operating the ministry Creation Science Evangelism and Dinosaur Adventureland in Pensacola, Florida. One of the great privileges of my ministry is I get to do debates at universities against those who believe in the theory of evolution. What you're about to see is a debate that I did in Little Rock, Arkansas in the early spring of the year 2002. I would be honored to come do a debate at your university or against any number of professors at the same time. The object is to get the truth out to the kids. We want students to be taught the truth. We believe the scientific evidence indicates that God's Word is absolutely true, and we defend that against all comers. Hope you enjoyed this debate. We have an awful lot of other materials on creation evolution. You can get our catalog or call our website or call our office, and we'll be glad to send you information about the other materials we offer on this topic of creation evolution. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. I have an announcement to make at the beginning, and Paul, I sort of apologize for not telling you this sooner, but it has to be said. Well, I was doing preparation for this debate and looking up various things and trying to come up with various arguments and counter-arguments for the points that I knew or that I thought that Dr. Hovind here would raise. And I started thinking about all of the arguments that he'd made in the previous debate, all of the things that he'd said, all of the points that he'd brought up that I just found myself incapable of refuting. And I did a good deal of background digging into the claims and the statements and the facts that Dr. Hovind presented, thanks in part to his very excellent website, www.drdino.com, which I can highly recommend. And I started to think about the way I'd taught evolution in the past, about all of the students of mine, some of whom are here tonight, whom I'd bullied and brainwashed and intimidated and, generally tried to make feel bad because I couldn't get them to convert to my own particular mode of thinking. And I thought about the way that, the senseless waste of taxpayer money for me to go in and act like an indoctrinator rather than an educator, and the way I've always insisted that my students accept this because it seems so right to me. Well, this is not particularly easy for me to say. It's not always easy to talk with your foot this firmly planted in one's mouth, but I want to make a public promise right now. I really don't want to make this a typical adversarial, name-calling, angry, mocking debate the way I sort of remember the last one as having been. What I'd like to do is make this a learning experience, because from here on out, whenever I teach my evolution class, which I have to do because it's what they hired me for, I want to add a creation science section to it. And I want to learn about what it is I should be teaching, because I come from a very secular background. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Y'all clap too. Thank you. Wow. Things still on? Great. You know, the high school I went to was a public high school in Louisiana, great education capital of the world that it is. And things like this just weren't covered in weren't covered in my high school. One friend of mine was actually taken to after-school detention for saying the name of Jesus out loud. That's what the atmosphere there was like. I kid you not. And of course, in my college education, first at Tulane and then at the People's Republic of Berkeley, California, which is a little different from here, I might add, just a touch. Of course, I was not exposed to things like this. So the reason I came here was not so much to defend my own case, because evolution is far past anything that I could say to defend it. What I really would like to do here is learn some of the things that I should be teaching, some of the things I should be presenting, and the ways in which I should be presenting it, to make sure that all of my future classes are even and open-handed and non-intimidating to people of all persuasions who should happen to take them. And so I really don't have anything else to say. I ended up not presenting a particularly strong defense, and I hope this doesn't upset the presenters. We were told to make this a debate, so in my own feeble way, I will do my best to answer any points that Dr. Hovind here brings up. But what I would like to do, and what I hope some of you will do, is simply to make this a learning experience for all, for us to learn about, well, in my case, learn about what I need to be covering better, which is the creation view. And I know that wasn't 15 minutes. This could mean we all get out of here a little early. Aw.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is my 65th debate, and that's the first time I've had someone say they would like to be open-minded about it, and I really appreciate that. And I will come at my expense to speak to your class anytime you'd like, okay? Let me know. Here's my position. I believe in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. I believe he did it in 6 literal days, exactly like he told us in Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. I believe the world before the flood was very different. The people lived to be over 900 years old. I believe the word evolution is confusing to the kids because there are 6 different meanings or levels or stages to evolution, only one of which is really scientific. And here's where all of the confusion comes in. First, you'd have to have cosmic evolution. That would be the Big Bang. The origin of time, space, and matter is a complete mystery to scientists, and to include this as part of a science education is simply lying to the kids, okay? We don't know how time, space, and matter came into being. If you have a theory about that, that's great, but don't teach it as if it's a fact, because the Big Bang is a far cry from a fact, okay? Secondly, we'd have to have chemical evolution. According to the Big Bang theory, hydrogen was produced. Well, how did we get all these other elements? There are 92 elements plus the synthetic ones. Thirdly, we'd have stellar or planetary evolution. No one's ever seen a star forming. We see stars blow up all the time. We never see one form. So that's not part of science to say stars evolved over millions of years. Nobody's ever observed that. That's not part of science. It's part of a religion that somebody believes in. Fourthly, we have organic evolution. That's the origin of life. No one has a clue how life can get started from non-living material, and it certainly has not been proven how it happened in the past. This also is not part of science. This is part of a religion and should not be taught at taxpayer expense in schools. Fifthly, we have macroevolution. That's where an animal changes from one kind of animal into another. No one has ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. All we see is dogs produce dogs. Now, you may get a big dog or a little dog, but you will always get a dog when you crossbreed dogs, okay? And probably the dog, the wolf, and the coyote had a common ancestor. I wouldn't argue about that. But a 5-year-old kid knows they're the same kind of animal. Here we have a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. And I ask kids all the time, which one is not like the others? And every 5-year-old gets it right. It's the banana, okay? The Bible says they will bring forth after their kind. So my position is very clearly, variations within the original created kinds are all that we have ever seen and all that can be called science. Science deals with things we can observe and study and test and demonstrate. The first 5 stages that I shared with you are not science. They are a religion, plain and simple. Only number 6 is really scientific. Now, if you observe variations within the created kind and you say, okay, I think this variation might lead to bigger changes, okay, you're welcome to believe that, But that's where you just stepped out of science and went into your religion. You just went into the metaphysical. You think it might have happened long ago and far away. That's not science. Okay, that's a religion. My position is the evolution theory is not only stupid and an insult to our intelligence, it is dangerous. We are teaching the kids they're an animal, and then we wonder why they act like animals. This textbook says 30 million years ago, these creatures evolved. The earliest fossil apes that can be ancestral to both humans and modern apes. We teach the kids they're nothing but an ape, or an ape derived from the same ancestor as an ape, and then we wonder why they act like animals. You don't need to be a genius to figure this out, folks. What you believe determines how you behave. This textbook says you are an animal and share a common heritage with earthworms. Now, I don't care if somebody wants to believe that, but that's not science. And I resent paying for that to go into the textbook, because that's not science. That's his religion. He believes we have a common ancestor with earthworms. He doesn't know that, okay? And textbooks are jam-packed full of stuff like this, propaganda to get the kids to believe this silly theory. We teach them they're an animal, and they're acting like animals, okay? Go visit the schools, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I taught for 15 years. Kids are being taught there's no such thing as a moral standard. I challenge people all over the world. I ask them the question, if evolution is true, how do we determine right from wrong? If evolution is true, what is sin? I'm telling you, there is no absolute standard to determine right from wrong if evolution is true. You just can't tell. My position is anyone who teaches this false religion and destroys the faith of students is in serious trouble when they face God, because they're destroying their faith. Jesus said very clearly, whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Now, if you want to teach science, then teach science. But if you're going to mix your religion in with it and try to make the kids believe that they came from an ape-like ancestor, you better understand you're destroying somebody's faith, and you're going to face God with this. You're going to be in serious trouble. I'm just here to warn you. I'm the messenger boy. My position is every one of us has broken God's commandments. God created this world, and He owns it, and everyone in this room, especially me, has broken God's laws. And we are in serious trouble. Nobody can get to heaven on their own merits. The Bible says, thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. If you have any sin in your life, you cannot go to heaven unless you have been forgiven. And 33 years ago yesterday, I asked the Lord to save me, and I'm going to heaven. It's not at all because I'm good. It's because I have been forgiven. Anyone who repents and asks for God's forgiveness shall be saved. And that's what I recommend everybody do. My position is very simple. Many people believe in evolution because they do not want to accept responsibility for answering to a creator. There's no scientific reason to accept this theory, but some people really like that theory because that's a logical way to get freedom from God. We're warned about this in Romans chapter 1, about people who would accept this theory. It says, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient. You ought to read the whole chapter about how the people descend into depravity, because they're just looking for some way to get rid of God. They're going to be backbiters, haters of God, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. The Bible says, for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. Evolution, at least the first 5 stages I shared with you, are indeed a lie in my opinion. There is no evidence to support evolution except things that are proven to be lies. This textbook just clearly shows the kids that the mammals, the birds, the crocodiles all have a common ancestor. Well, you are welcome to believe that, but don't call that science. That's a religion that some people believe in, but there's no scientific evidence that any animal has ever produced a different kind of animal. None, okay? This one says the coccyx, that's your tailbone, is a small bone at the end of the human vertebral column. It has no present function. That is simply a lie. You're a medical doctor. You know there are 9 muscles that attach to the tailbone, without which you cannot perform some very valuable functions. I won't tell you what they all are, but trust me, you need those muscles. Your tailbone is not vestigial, okay? And I have a long-time standing offer. If anybody ever tells you the tailbone is evidence for evolution because we don't need it anymore, you tell them, I will pay to have theirs removed. Tell them, bend over. This textbook says many organisms retain traces of their evolutionary history. For example, the whale retains pelvic and leg bones as useless vestiges. Now, this is just simply a lie, okay? Those bones in the whale's abdomen are anchor points that muscles attach to, and without those specialized bones and those specialized muscles, the whales cannot reproduce. The male and female bones, whales have bones that are different. They're used for reproduction. It has nothing to do with walking on land. And so the guy who wrote this is either ignorant or he's lying to his students. But it's not true either way, okay? This one says the human embryo has gill slits. It shows the fish, the reptile, the bird, and the mammal having gills. This was proven wrong in 1874. This is a lie. This is not true, but it is still in a year 2000 textbook. Those little folds of skin on the embryo develop into bones in the ear and glands in the throat. They never have anything to do with breathing. I've seen folks that have 5 or 6 chins, and they cannot breathe through any of them but the top one, okay? My position is there is no scientific evidence to support the idea that we all came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago, which is precisely what evolution boils down to if you get rid of all the big words and the fluff and the feathers, okay? All evidence shown to kids in textbooks as evidence for evolution has been proven wrong. Gill slits, horse evolution, etc. Your kids are being lied to. My position is if there is evidence for a theory, please show it to me. Just don't lie to the kids. There's an excellent book showing 15 of the known lies in the textbooks. I cover 28 of them on my videotape number 4 right there on the table, and my material is not copyrighted. So you skeptics, if you want to buy my tapes, you can copy it, send it back, get your money back. Okay, but don't ask me to loan it to you, okay? That's my position. All right. My position is the citizens of Arkansas should pass and enforce legislation banning lies from textbooks and lying teachers from the classroom. Teachers who lie to students in order to get them to believe a theory should be fired immediately. They should get an honest job. These 6 things doth the Lord hate: a lying tongue. It's one of the things God hates, okay? The Bible says all liars shall have their part in the lake of fire, which burneth with fire and brimstone. This is the second death. So my position is very simple. I like science. I'm not against science. I'm not against education. My mother retired from teaching public school. My brother's in his 34th year teaching school. There are many good, godly teachers in the system. But folks, there is no evidence whatsoever for this theory of evolution that we're teaching our kids, and it's time we make the schools teach the truth. Now, if you want them to believe you came from a rock, I can understand that, okay? And if you have some evidence for that, then please show it to me. But don't lie to the kids. And all we have so far, and I'll be covering that tonight at the church, or if you get my video number 4, where we cover 2.5 hours of lies in the textbooks, you'll see some of the things that kids have to face every day, and they're going to face them tomorrow at the University of Central Arkansas in the textbooks. Bring me the biology textbooks in your high school or junior high or college here in this area. I will show you the pages that need to be torn out. It's very simple. I was in a debate a few months ago at the University of West Florida, and I mentioned if the textbook says the embryo has gill slits, cut the page out. It's not true. You don't need to buy a whole new book. The rest of the book's got a lot of good science in it. Just cut that page out. One professor got up and he said, I don't think we ought to deface textbooks. I said, sir, if you were teaching mathematics and you found a page that said 2 + 2 is 5, what would you do? He said, I would tell the students to mark out the wrong answer and write in the correct answer. I said, you would deface a textbook? I said, now, sir, since you teach biology, if you come across the page that says the embryo has gill slits, and you know that idea was made up by Ernst Haeckel in 1869, it was proven wrong in 1874. He even held a trial at the University of Jena. He admitted he lied. He was fraud, okay? Would you have the students fix that page? He said, no. I said, then, sir, you are a hypocrite. And you ought to get an honest job picking peaches or changing tires, but you ought to quit lying to your kids in your classroom, okay? Jim Holt from Springdale, Arkansas, up in that northwest Arkansas, and Jim Bob Duger and I worked very hard to put together a bill last year that said the state of Arkansas will not use tax dollars to purchase materials that contain knowingly fraudulent information. It almost passed the House of Representatives, and we're going to try it again this year, and we're going to try it again every year until somebody gets the message. So, I want to go on record as saying I love science, I'm not anti-science, I'm not anti-schools. I just think the lies ought to be taken out of the books, and I don't know of anything to support the evolution theory, and I want to see the evidence so badly that we've been for about 10 years now offering $250,000 if somebody's got some real scientific evidence for evolution. I want to see it real bad. Thank you so much.
All right, yeah, and thank you very much. That was very informative. Incidentally, I did a little research on one of the matters you mentioned. There is actually a website, http://www.coccyx.com, COCCYX. No, I think it's org, not com. Yeah, it's not a commercial site. But it's a page put out with information on an operation called coccygectomy. It's removal of the coccyx. It actually was done to a friend of mine, a fellow graduate student who had broken hers during childbirth. And it's not particularly common surgery, but it is done. There's a listing of a number of doctors who perform it, usually as treatment for intractable pain, pain that won't go away. So now that you have this offer that you'll pay to have someone's coccyx removed, do you mind if I give your name and number to... All right, ask... the condition's called coccydynia. That's COCCYDYNIA. It's a medical condition where misalignment of the coccyx causes pain that can range from mild discomfort to continuous agony. And the success rate is about 90%. It takes a while to recover, but people generally do get better. I think my friend's certain vital functions ended up coming out unimpaired, although I couldn't really ask direct. You understand. I couldn't really ask that. All right. I have a question now that's come up in my reading. All too often, we see illustrations of the evolutionary process as being something like this. You have over on the left, you have Bonzo the chimp, and Oog the ape man is over near there, and then you have Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and some naked guy over on the right. And this picture of how evolution in general and human evolution progresses has been attacked very stridently by authors like Jonathan Wells, as well as other creationist authors probably going back to George McCready Price in the 1920s. Well, I promise never to teach that human evolution happened this way. And when you get into when you read, as I have read, I have gone over to Central Baptist College Library and done some reading of the other side's position on human evolution. The creation literature talks a great deal about how all life is divided up into individually created kinds. And Dr. Hovind gave a very fine example of how these work. You can have a dog, a wolf, and a coyote, and sure, maybe there's been a little bit of change. All three of those might have evolved from a common dog-like ancestor, but it was still a dog, not a rutabaga or some such. And while you'll find, if you read the creation literature, that there's some debate as to exactly how you should define what a kind is, in most cases it's quite obvious. On the left you have the skull of a chimp. On the right you have the skull of a human. And these clearly belong to different created kinds. In fact, in case any of the skeptics in here doubt my word, I brought a replica. This is not an actual skull. Actually, it is. This is all that's left of the last person I caught cheating on one of my exams. Right here. And this guy might have played defensive backfield for our football team once. Actually, no, I take that back. This is a chimpanzee skull, replica. Again, we don't have actual bone. And it's quite obvious that they're quite different. And there cannot be any missing links between them if the creationist view of human origins is true. And there have been a number of fossils that have been found that have turned up in various parts in the world: Java Man, Lucy, Cro-Magnon, things like that. And if creation science is correct, and this is what puzzles me a little bit, there cannot be missing links between ape kind and mankind. Everything that we find must be either an ape or a human. And this has been the position of many of the authorities I've read, of people like Marvin Lubenow, whose book is available for purchase on Dr. Hovind's website, or Jack Cuozzo, author of a very fine book that's also available for purchase. But when I started looking into this, I started running into some difficulties. In the trade, we often refer to fossils by catalog numbers. So this is skull KNMER 1470. Looking a little stepped on, of course. I do hope I look that good in 6,000 years. And I'd like to compare it with another skull, skull ZKD-E3, that was also found quite some time ago. And as it happens, I have replicas available of both of these. The originals are carefully kept, but replicas are generally available for study. And for the record, this one at least I purchased with my own funds, so your tax dollars did not go into using this as an indoctrination tool. You're welcome. So if we compare these, as we know, they must be either clearly ape or clearly human. There was a creationist writing in the 70s, it might have been Kelly Seagraves, I forget, who mentioned that the more difficult it is to determine the boundaries between created kinds, the more evolution is going to look like as if it's true. So it should be obvious as to what is an ape and what is a man. If you purchase this book by Jack Cuozzo called Buried Alive, he is I believe he's an orthodontist. He has a great deal of experience with skulls and with bones. And according to him, they're both essentially apes. They've got small brains. The one over on the left has a brain size of about 750 cubic centimeters. That's roughly half of your own. And he considers both of these to be basically funny-looking apes. Marvin Lubenow, on the other hand, author of a book Bones of Contention, which is a very fine book, very fine review of the fossil record, human fossil record, from a creationist viewpoint, has placed both of these in as man. A researcher by the name of A.W. Mellert considers the one on the left, KNMER 1470, to be an ape, and the one on the right, the ZKD skull, to be a man. And an author I've become familiar with on the net by the name of David Menton considers the one on the left to be male, a man, and the one on the right to be an ape. So I'm getting confused by this because I've read 4 well-accredited creationist authors, 4 opinions that they have, and I get all 4 possible combinations of which one is an ape and which one is a man. If you read an essay by David Menton, a PhD scientist in Kansas City, Missouri, called The Scientific Evidence for the Origin of Man, very short essay, it says, there were only small eyebrow ridges, no crest, and a domed skull typical of a human. This is the one he's talking about. Indeed, it appeared to be a human skull. Walter Brown, on the other hand, whose book, In the Beginning, is available for sale over there, on page 12, states that this animal clearly had ape-like proportions and should never have been classified as man-like. So on Dr. Hovind's website, he sells Martin Lubenow's book, who states that both skulls are human, and Jack Cuozzo's book, who says both are apes. Now, I certainly believe in not exposing people to fraudulent information, but the problem is either that one's incorrect, or that one's incorrect, or both of them are incorrect. At least one of these must contain false information and therefore should not be placed into school libraries or used as discussion material in accordance with this law in Arkansas that they're trying to get passed. So what I'd like to know is what are the criteria by which you can decide whether one of these skulls belong to a member of the ape kind or a member of the mankind, and what I'll do is I'm going to unclip this for a moment. I'll move these over here to your table because I'd like, Dr. Hovind, if at all possible, that you show me exactly what features there are that enable us to say that such and such a fossil is an ape or that such and such is a man, because I've been getting different answers from different respected and credentialed writers in the scientific creation field. I would very much like to know what I should be teaching to my students when they ask about this. They're a pretty smart crew. They've heard of these skulls before. So I thank you very much. In just a minute, I'll bring these over to your table.
All right. The Bible says we are made in God's image. The textbooks teach the kids this is Grandpa, or something similar to this. We came from an ape-like ancestor. So what is the truth about the cavemen? Can an ape-like creature turn to a human? Okay. Well, I guess that depends on what you mean by caveman, okay? There are many people who live in caves, okay? Lot and his daughter lived in caves. Joshua hid the 5 kings hid in a cave. Osama bin Laden's the world's most wanted caveman right now. Every one of the so-called cavemen that is mentioned in the books has been demonstrated to be wrong. Nebraska man, for instance, built from one tooth, okay? Later found to be the tooth of a pig. Piltdown man, a deliberate fraud, but it was in the textbooks for 40 years before it was proven that it was a fraud, okay? Over 500 papers, some PhD papers even, were written, dissertations on the Piltdown man, and it was a deliberate lie. Neanderthal man is still in textbooks today, yet it's been demonstrated years ago. Neanderthal man is just an old man with arthritis, okay, which is why he was bent over. The brains of Neanderthals are 13% bigger than ours. Many, many Neanderthals have been found. They have average height of 5'9", about the same as people today. Dr. Kawazo, who's a friend of mine and is a dentist and had been studying what you said for 30-some years on the growth of the human face, did a great study on this. The Neanderthals were probably people who were living post-flood, right after the flood, when people still lived to be 400 years old after the flood. Because the Bible says after the flood they lived to be 400 for a few generations, and then 200, and then 100. The bones of your forehead never, actually the bones of your face never stop growing. And so the Neanderthals are probably post-flood people who are living to be 200 or 300 years old. I don't know. But they certainly are not subhuman. Their brain capacity is bigger than ours, okay? And the eyebrow ridge is simply an indication of great age, probably several hundred years old. Cro-Magnon man, modern in every respect. Australopithecus africanus is still in textbooks today as used as evidence for evolution. Yet in 1973, it was demonstrated it could not possibly be evidence for evolution. Australopithecus afarensis, better known as Lucy, is in textbooks today. Lucy was 3 feet tall, found by Donald Johansen in 1974, Hadar Valley, Ethiopia. He said Lucy's becoming a human, particularly because of the knee joint. Well, the fact is there's quite a bit of controversy about that knee joint, and that knee joint, the one that was labeled Lucy's knee in National Geographic was not Lucy's knee. Yeah, that one was found 1.5 miles away. So you need to get Tom Willis's website from csama.org, Creation Science Association of Mid-America in Kansas City, to get information about Lucy's knee joint. The femur was angled, and that was his evidence it's becoming a human. Well, the fact is monkeys that climb trees have angled femurs. Monkeys that walk on the ground have a straight femur. So it's not evidence. The way they word it in the textbooks, though, is deceitful. It will say it has ape-like features. You've all got hair. That's an ape-like feature. So's my dog, okay? They say Lucy's knee was slightly bigger than a regular ape. Doesn't prove a thing, okay? The bones of a Clydesdale are slightly bigger than a regular horse, okay? Doesn't prove it's becoming a truck. St. Louis Zoo has human feet on their wax figure of Lucy at the St. Louis Zoo. It's up there today. Not 1 foot bone was found, and every other Australopithecine that has been found had curled toes. They were knuckle walkers. But the zoo director, Bruce Carr, was told about this. He said, look, what you have up here is a complete misrepresentation. It's a lie. He said, zoo officials have no plans to knuckle under. We cannot be updating every exhibit based on every new piece of evidence. We look at the overall exhibit and the impression it creates. We think the overall impression this exhibit creates is correct. In other words, Bruce is saying it's okay to lie to students that come to our zoo because we think the impression that man evolved from an ape-like ancestor is right. Therefore, even though our statue's a lie, we're going to keep it up here because of the impression it gives to the kids. Now, that guy ought to find an honest job picking peaches, and somebody in Missouri ought to help him. He does no business being involved in lying to kids. Charles Oxnard spent 16 years studying every single bone of Lucy with the computer multivariate analysis. He said Lucy is not a missing link. It's just an unusual monkey, that's all. And there might be some still alive today. So Lucy is not a missing link. Peking man, all evidence disappeared, but that was used as evidence for evolution for many years. And yet, Peking man, what it amounted to was a bunch of monkey skulls that were smashed, found in a cave, and human tools found with them. So some brilliant guy in a government grant said, wow, these monkeys are learning to use tools. Hello, somebody's using the tools on the monkeys, you know. Some people like to eat monkey brains, watch Indiana Jones, okay? They hid the fact that they found 10 human skulls, 10 human remains in the same cave. In the textbooks today is Homo erectus, which you referred to earlier, used to be called Java man, then changed the name to Pithecanthropus erectus, and now called Homo erectus, all the same creature. This was found, made from a few scraps of bone, in 1891 in Java, Indonesia, why it was called the Java man, by a Dutch anatomist, Dr. Dubois. He had gone to Indonesia to look for missing links. He loved the evolution theory. He believed in evolution very strongly, so he's not an unbiased observer, okay? He went to Indonesia to try to find a missing link. What he found was an ape's skull cap, 3 human teeth, and a thigh bone, which he found a year later 50 feet away, and it was obviously from a human, and he informed the world he had found the missing link. He hid the fact that he found a human skull in the same area, two human skulls in the same area. He put those skulls under his bed, under the floorboards, under his house. Kind of like Edgar Allan Poe, you know, the telltale heart. Only this was the telltale heads. He lied. And the fact that you're still using Java man as evidence for evolution indicates you need to study this a little further. Dr. Dubois was a liar, okay? There is no evidence of how man evolved, none whatsoever. Fossil evidence of human evolution is evolutionary history is fragmentary and open to various interpretations. Fossil evidence of chimpanzee evolution is absent altogether. Nature magazine, volume 412. Marvin Lubinau's book and Coazo's book, they may disagree on whether something is human or ape, but there's a much, much bigger point you are totally missing. I'll share it with you here. Absolutely no fossil could possibly prove evidence. It could not be used as evidence for evolution. If you walked into a court of law and said, Your Honor, this is the ancestor of humans today, anybody with half a brain in their head would say, Your Honor, he can't prove this fossil had any kids. You certainly can't prove it had different kids. Why on earth would you think a bone you found in the dirt can do something animals today cannot do? Animals today produce the same kind. Why would you think it was different long ago and far away? That's my whole point. That is not science. That's a religion. Now, if you want to believe this is an ancestor of anybody, you can believe whatever you want, but that's not science, and it shouldn't be you shouldn't be using taxpayers' dollars to spread your religion in the public school system, plain and simple. Now, that's my point number one. No fossil could possibly count as evidence for evolution. It couldn't count because you can't demonstrate it had any kids. And the fact that you find a bone in the dirt lower than some other bone you found in the dirt, that doesn't prove any relationship either. I mean, a freshman law student would have a heyday with evolution, disproving it. It'd be so simple in the average court of law. The problem is evolution doesn't have to be proven in a court of law. It only has to be made believable for students to come to school. And here's some student in the school who has a fear of his teacher because the teacher has an academic and a psychological advantage over him. And now he's going to be taught this stuff and he doesn't dare question it too loudly or it might affect his grade or his possibility for graduation. Secondly, I'd like to point out the similarities between these creatures. And there are many similarities. I'll be quick to agree. Okay, I taught biology and anatomy for many years. There are thousands of similarities. The similarity demonstrates a common designer. It doesn't demonstrate a common ancestor. There's thousands of parts off a Chevy that'll fit, off a Chevy Corvette that'll fit on a Chevy Lumina. Thousands of parts will interchange. That doesn't prove they're all evolving from a skateboard. They're all coming from General Motors. Hello, okay? So the similarities you're finding in these skulls is just as much evidence for a common designer of these creatures. They have similarities like binocular vision, both eyes on the front of the head as opposed to the sides, because humans and chimpanzees have similar tasks to perform in life. They have to find their food, they have to see where they're going, they have to be able to do certain things. There are also thousands and thousands of differences between humans and chimpanzees. I mean, thousands of differences. People will say, well, humans and chimps are 98.6% similar, or 98.4% similar with current in their DNA structure. Well, first place, 1.6% of the DNA difference is an incredible amount of difference. The fellow who was in charge of the DNA genome project, or one of the I think he was in charge of it. I've got the information here if my computer didn't lock up on me. According to evolution, things get better automatically, you know. But I cannot get it to work for me. The guy in charge of the, I'll get the quote here for you, since I got 2 minutes left. He said, this 1.6% difference is absolutely incredible amount of difference. It amounts to 48 million nucleotides that are difference. And a difference of only 3 nucleotides is nearly always fatal to the organism. I know somebody's not going to believe me, so I'll show you where he said it himself. Human DNA is incredibly complex. Okay. I think I've got the quote right here. Let's see. Similarity in DNA. Here we go. Dr. Barney Maddox, the leading genetic genome researcher, said, concerning these genetic differences, now the genetic difference between human and his nearest relative, he's not a nearest relative, folks, but Barney believes he is, okay? I know a good job we can get for Barney, too. He says, we're relatives to the chimpanzee. He said, this is at least 1.6%. That doesn't sound like much, but calculated out, there's a gap of 48 million nucleotides, and a change of only 3 nucleotides is fatal to an animal. There is no possibility of change. So 2 major points I would like you to address. Number 1, the similarities could just as easily be demonstration of common creator. Why aren't students taught that? Why are they only taught one religious viewpoint as opposed to all religious viewpoints? Secondly, the so-called ancestors, no fossil would demonstrate evidence for evolution. Absolutely none. It couldn't count in a court of law because, as I said, you can't prove it had any kids. Why on earth would you think a bone you found in the dirt is evidence for evolution? It can't be. If evolution is really true, let's watch it happen. Let's see it. And the argument will be, well, it happens so slowly we can't see it. Okay, then it's not science. It's something you believe happened, but that's not demonstrable in a laboratory. It's not testable. It's not part of science. And I resent them cutting down our perfectly good trees to print that stuff in a textbook. You know, where's Al Gore when you need him, okay? So, my answer to your question is very simple. Yes, there are thousands of similarities. I don't know if this was a human or an ape. It doesn't matter. It wouldn't count as evidence for evolution because you couldn't prove it had any kids, okay? If there are species of extinct apes, and I'm sure there are thousands, you know, things that have gone extinct over the years, thousands of animals have gone extinct. So what? That doesn't prove evolution either. That's the opposite of evolution. And so if you're using tax dollars to line these things up in your classroom and say, boys and girls, can't you see the similarity here? And some kid in your class says, yes, teacher, doesn't this prove a common designer? You should say, well, you're right. It certainly could prove a common designer. We don't know. Why on earth are we discussing origins in science class anyway? Origins is not part of science. You're going to make somebody upset no matter which way you discuss it. Okay? Origins has no business being involved in the school system. It just shouldn't be discussed. Bigger question, yeah, it is, should we even have public schools? We'll get into that some other time. Thank you so much.
The second question that we want to present to our debaters is, what is the origin and the age of the universe, and what is your method of determining it? And Dr. Wagner, you will have 17 minutes, and Dr. Hovind, you will have 10.
Sorry, this will take a second to get my monitor working again. Well, I think I can, let's see here. Well, I think I can assure both you, Dr. Hovind, and everyone here that I will never again teach about Nebraska Man and Piltdown Man. Those are permanently out of my lecture notes for all time. Thank you. Right, and yes, I did note Java Man, which of course was, simply in the original find, it was a skull cap and a leg bone found from